We know that Nuno Espirito Santo has been weighing up the options available to him in the senior squad. And it's very likely that there'll be a number of players that he will want to let go of when the January transfer window opens, either to sell or to loan out. But that does not include selling Jarrod Bowen. So let's immediately quash that particular rumour that's popped up yet again. I'm sure you all know that Bowen is absolutely not going to Spurs because he knows what it would be like to move to such a rival, unlike Mr. Kudus, who obviously didn't give a damn so long as he was okay. The thought that Bowen would be allowed to leave for a club like Spurs or Liverpool or Man United in January is just the usual clickbait rubbish. That's not to say that there's no interest from these clubs. I'm sure there is. But whilst there is so much unrest at West Ham, the board aren't completely stupid to allow Bowen to leave in January, and I believe he'll still be at the club when that January window shuts. Now, before I talk about other players and the squad itself, if you're new to this channel, or if you've watched the West Ham Voice before, but yet to become a subscriber, please do so. If you click on that QR code that's just appeared in the corner, that will take you straight to the subscription page. Subscription to the West Ham Voice is totally free. So please do consider becoming a subscriber. If you like the content, then please do hit the like button at the very least. If you don't subscribe, or even if you do subscribe, please hit the like button. And there's also a hype button below the video where if you click on that, it actually elevates the video so other viewers on YouTube can watch it. And if you're feeling quite generous, you can become a member of the West Ham Voice. Membership is $1.99 a month. And for that, you get extra content. And all the money that's raised through the membership scheme goes to Prostate Cancer UK. And for those of you who watch me on a regular basis, you know why that particular charity is quite close to me. Right, let's move on to some other stories then. Well, yet again, Lucas Paqueta is back in the news. It was only a day or so ago that I did an in-depth video on whether Paqueta will stay or go in January. I mentioned that Paqueta had posted on social media a photo of him and his two boys in full West Ham kit to suggest that the latest rumours are just that, rumours and no more. However, as usual, social media takes no notice of any reality. The news on Thursday by none other than Fabrizio Romano suggested that West Ham have made inquiries about the possible availability of Kobbie Mainoo and Joshua Zirkzee. What's that got to do with Paqueta? Now, both those players are getting next to no game time. I'll explain that in a minute as to what it links to Paqueta. Both those players are not getting any game time, and Ruben Amorim has stated that he's kind of reluctant to let any players leave in January, as he believes he will need all his squad throughout the season. However, for Mainoo and Zirkzee, they have aspirations. They want to be part of their respective national squads to take part in next year's World Cup. And the only way that they're going to achieve this is by playing regularly. If not at Man United, then it's got to be somewhere else. Now, I can see why Nuno would be interested in these players, and there's no denying that they would certainly add value to the squad we currently have. But the downside could be that Amorim might want to do a deal where Paqueta is exchanged as part of the deal for one or both of these players to come to West Ham. Now, there are other complications to these players coming to our club. Firstly, it's highly unlikely that if they're only for sale and not to loan out, it's highly unlikely we're going to be able to afford either of them. Secondly, it's also highly unlikely that those players will want to permanently move to West Ham given our current predicaments. So maybe, if they are available on loan, maybe a deal for Mainoo and Zirkzee coming to West Ham for the remainder of this season might see Paqueta going the other way on loan. That's possible. It's a possibility. What happens thereafter is dependent on what loan agreement is made. Would it be a loan with option to buy? Would it be a loan with obligation to buy? I don't know. But my gut would suggest that Nuno would not only want to keep Paqueta, but to also add Mainu and Xerxes to the squad containing the Brazilian. However, high on the list of players Nuno would like to move on in January inevitably would include James Ward-Prowse. Excuse me. The central midfielder turns 31 on Saturday and has not played a minute under Nuno since the Portuguesa arrived at the club. Now, how ironic it is that James Ward-Prowse was the first player on the team sheet for Graham Potter. Yet Nuno is reluctant to find a place for him, even on the subs bench, let alone the starting 11. But we all knew this was coming, given that Nuno cut James Ward-Prowse's loan spell short when he was sent on loan to Nottingham Forest last season. But has the midfield improved since Ward-Prowse been dropped? I've got to say no, and the results have kind of confirmed this. But that's more down to Nuno finding some bizarre reasons to be picking players like Andy Irving to start in midfield rather than the likes of Magassa or Potts. Look, I think it was actually the right thing to do to drop James Ward-Prowse. He slowed the play down. We knew it was laboured. We knew something different had to happen. However, I believe, in fact, I'm actually praying that Nuno's midfield and defensive experiments are now over. You know, the last few games are now done and dusted, and he will start selecting a starting 11 that kind of resembles much closer to the team that finished the game against Leeds United rather than the one that started it. But let's go back to Ward-Prowse. It's pretty evident that either a sale or much more likely a loan agreement will see the player leave the club in January. Now, I said, I think it'd be more likely a loan deal. And given the fact that he's on 115 grand a week at the moment, West Ham are almost inevitably going to have to subsidise a large chunk of his wages in order to facilitate that loan move. But if Nuno wants reinforcements, he will have to find a way to move some of these players on, with James Ward-Prowse being top of the pile. But there are other players who could be seeing the exit door at West Ham. Now, with the news that we've gotten back goalkeeper Finlay Herrick, the 19-year-old keeper who was on loan for the season at Boreham Wood, we've got him back early. There's a suggestion that he could be replacing Mads Hermansen as our third choice keeper in the squad. Finlay Herrick has done exceptionally well. He's kept something like 7 clean sheets on loan at Boreham Wood. He's done exceptionally well there. But if we do bring him back, I think there's actually a choice. It will either be Finlay Herrick to come in as a third choice, or probably more likely Christian Heggie to be elevated from the under-21s. He's 23 years old himself. Heggie to be elevated from the under-21s as a third choice keeper, and then Herrick to take his place in the under-21s. Maybe. I'm just guessing. But whatever happens, there's a sign here that if we're recalling Finlay Herrick from his loan spell early, then maybe we are looking to offload Mads Hermansen, who signed for the club in a £15 million deal in the summer. Now, with regards to Hermansen, I think West Ham will actually be looking to sell the player, and it's likely to be a far easier sale, and we get some money for him than it would be to try and sell James Ward-Prowse. Whether we will get our money back on Hermansen will remain to be seen. But if there's no club interested in the player here in England, then West Ham will be looking to sell him to a club abroad in Europe. There'll be further attempts to sell or move on, loan out, both Andrew Irving and Guido Rodriguez. But whilst Rodriguez is on a nice earner at the club, and given that it's reported he turned down several offers to leave West Ham in the summer, it looks like the Argentine will see out his contract that ends this summer. Now, there is an option to extend Rodriguez's contract by a further year, but West Ham are not likely to be taking up that option. With regards to Irving, there was interest in the player to be sold from teams in Scotland and Europe, and it's anticipated he will also move on in January. Now, there's also a big desire to move on another player who has hardly played for us or has hardly made an impact, and that, of course, is Nicholas Fulkrug. But his injury record may hinder this. If he's back from injury before the January window opens, then there's a small chance, that we may be able to loan him out to a club in Germany. But if all these players are likely to go in January, then how are we going to replace them? We won't be getting an awful lot of money for any of these players if all of them or most of them are going to be loaned out. As I've already mentioned, just like Mainu and Xerxes, the likelihood of any player wanting to come to West Ham on a permanent basis in January is going to be quite remote. However, if we do improve and at least get ourselves out of the drop zone by the time the January window opens, then the landscape could be very different. But there is one advantage that we need to factor in order to try and get players to this club. And that's the news that Sullivan's favoured agent, Will Salthouse, is unlikely to be involved in any deals. Because, first of all, I don't think he did us any favours when he brought in Callum Wilson, but also Nuno tends to work closely with super agent Jorge Mendes. Now, if you recall during the summer when we were initially trying to sign Fernandes, I suggested it's probably not going to happen because Mendes didn't usually work with that many clubs. Well, with Nuno here now, I know that changed. I know we managed to get him, but personally, I think we paid well over the odds to get him here, but that's another matter. But with Nuno here, all of this can now change, because if there's an agent who could persuade players to come to West Ham, then Mendes maybe is that agent. So with all the talk about Mainu, Xerxes, Gabriel Jesus, who's due to return from a lengthy ligament injury at Arsenal, Endrick, which I think is still the most far-fetched of all the players linked to us, what happens if we do not manage to attract these kinds of players that we need? Well, between now and when the January transfer window opens, there could be a huge opportunity for some of our academy players to step up to the plate. Nuno seems relatively comfortable to use academy players if he deems that they fit into the system that he wants. Now, I've already mentioned the possibility of either Finlay Herrick or Christian Heggie moving from academy level to the senior squad as third choice keeper, but there are a few other academy players who may also get their chance. George Earthy is back from injury and played a key role in helping the under-21s to beat Swindon Town in the Virtue Trophy just the other day. And I've no doubt that he will want to fight for his place back in the senior squad. Then there is, of course, Mohamedou Kante, who's making a lot of noise in the under-21s. He's absolutely shone this season in midfield, and his reward has been to sign an extended contract with the club. Kante only signed a 5-year deal last year, and then we loaned him, as part of the deal, we loaned him back to the club we signed him from, Paris FC. He's recently just turned 20 in September, and West Ham have now extended his contract by a further 2 years. So he's signed to West Ham United until 2031. If he continues on the path that he has done, there's every chance that Kante may get his chance in the senior squad sooner rather than later. Then there is Josh Landers, who joined West Ham only in February 2025. And he too has just recently signed an extended contract with West Ham until 2028. He's done excellently since he's been at the club. In 12 appearances for the under-18s when he first joined, he scored 9 goals. He's been quickly elevated this season to the under-21s, where he's continued his fine form by scoring five goals in 9 appearances. He's a natural striker, and at this moment in time could be ahead of other academy strikers and may even take Callum Marshall's spot in the senior squad. Landers has got the physique, he's got the build, even at a young age, to kind of fit in with more of what Nuno might be wanting from a striker. And then there's the forgotten man, or the almost forgotten man, in Daniel Cummings, who we signed on a free contract when he didn't renew the offer that was made to him by Celtic, so we snapped him up. Now, Cummings returned from injury only recently, but he too played a cameo role in the win over Swindon Town. Then one more player who has been drafted in to train with the senior squad this week, given that we've lost Dinos Mavropanos to what is likely to be an extended period out injured, and that is the extremely talented defender Ezra Myers, who at 18 has shown so much composure for his age. Myers is quick, comfortable on the ball, and reads the game well. All right, at under 21 level, I know that. He's technically tidy, he's calm in possession, which fits the way Nuno likes to build from the back. I know that the Premier League is a different beast, a completely different animal. You're up against physical strikers, weathered attackers, who will exploit any hesitation in a defender, especially a young defender. And expecting an 18-year-old like Myers to slot into a leaky backline and to steady things overnight is optimistic indeed. But there could be a pragmatic take to this. Myers could offer qualities that the senior squad currently lacks. Lack of pace, lack of composure, especially when under pressure. But he'll need careful introduction. Throwing him into every big match straight away risks undermining his confidence if things go wrong. Now, I'm not disillusioned enough to think that our academy players have the answers to all our current problems. Scarles, for example, has had a taste of Premier League, of senior football, and despite the way he's been badly used by Nuno playing on the right, we're still unreal. We're still a little bit unsure whether he's really Premier League standard or not. Callum Marshall, who I've mentioned, I also had high hopes for him, but maybe this is the season too early for him to make an impact in the Premier League. However, Freddie Potts should have had more starts under his belt by now, and I hope Nuno affords him that over the next coming games. Look, all these academy players, as I've said, they've got 2 months now to show Nuno or to offer Nuno some food for thought. Even if one academy player can break through in those 2 months, it would be a massive boost, not only to the player himself, to the club in general, and to Nuno for being afforded more options in team selections and substitutions. And, as I've said, if it gives him food for thought, if he thinks that any of these players can really step up to the senior squad, then that helps us with regards to try and go out there and get ourselves players in the transfer market. It's going to be a very interesting couple of months for West Ham, in which Nuno has got an opportunity to really shape this squad with what he currently has. He's from the players from the academy, as well as, if need be, dipping into the January transfer market as well. And let's not forget, despite all the doom and gloom out there, we've only played a quarter of this season so far. There's still 3/4 of this season left. So there's an awful lot yet to play for.